Thank you for joining us. Um, my name is Shane Moise, and I work for the Office for Innovation and Commercialization here on campus. We're a unit within the Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation. So our office provides support services and coordination across campus, specifically within the realm of entrepreneurship, innovation, and invention. So translating research and inventions that are created in laboratories on campus out to market. Beyond the research enterprise and the translation of those technologies, our office also supports student, both grad and undergrad entrepreneurship with programs at the basement. And most of our operations are carried out from two different sites on campus, one at the Design and Innovation Building, which if you've ever been, it's the central campus trolley stop. We're adjacent to the Epstein Family Amphitheater. Our second location on campus is also on the west side of the Five. It's up at North Torrey Pines. We also have one satellite office down at Park and Market, which is kind of on the border of East Village and downtown San Diego. So that is a little bit about myself. I'm going to throw it over. We're going to kind of go an introduction of the panelists, and then I'll go over the program, and I have a few questions to help kind of get our panelists to share their insights about what makes a successful submission for accelerating innovation to market, and then we'll take questions from our attendees. So, Steve, you're already unmuted, and you're to my adjacent to me on my screen. So I'm going to throw it over to you. Could you introduce yourself? What's your background, and maybe a highlight of your experience with this proof of
Well,
concept
sure,
program?
sure. Lots of lowlights to my experience, by the way, early on. But that said, as most of you know, I'm an entrepreneur in residence on campus, and I think I've met most of you, if not all of you. And um, but in any event, my big thing is communications, and a big believer, just based on experience, on all this compounded experience that I built up, that you can have the best idea in the world, but if you can't communicate it, well then goodbye. So anyway, so that's me in a nutshell.
All right, thank you, Steve.
Sure.
Yeah, Jay.
I'll mute myself. Hey, Jay Park. I am also an entrepreneur in residence here on the fourth floor. I am a physician by training. I work clinically 2 days a month at the UCSD hospital. But most of what I do is startup. I've been doing startup for about 20 years, been in multiple accelerators, been a mentor for multiple accelerators as well. And that's pretty much what I do. I do focus on health tech innovation, but I've been involved with fintech projects, software projects, tons of marketing projects. So that's my toolbox.
Thank you, Jay. Over to you, Julio.
All right, thanks, Shane. Julio de Muno. I also am an EIR with the Office of Innovation and Commercialization. I also run Home Lab at UC San Diego, the University Biotech Accelerator on campus. So AIM, we love this program. It's a great feeder into eventually starting your own company, potentially, and coming through the Home Lab Accelerator. We've had about 47 teams and $1.5 billion in exits and fundraisings in the biotech space. We look at life science companies for therapeutics, whether it's biological or small molecule drug discovery, medical device and diagnostics, sustainability. So we love biomaterials, lab grown meat, that kind of stuff. And then, of course, the very popular AI and drug discovery. So I would say at this stage, the most important thing is obviously building the technology, but also the team. The very early stages, we think team is really the thing that you can really makes or breaks your company, right? Technology might be great, but at the end of the day, you're going to look for a customer who's going to love the technology, and you're going to build a sound business. But that's never a straight line, and it's never an easy journey. And so never fail alone is one of the things we try and teach. and being able to recruit and build a strong team, both on the technology, but also on the business side, and having a real rounded team, being able to attract and recruit top talent, both your own team as well as your advisors. I think that's really important. So looking for big ideas and big markets with teams that can win. So again, emphasis on team at this early stage, because that's really where you have a lot of control.
Thank you, Julio. Now over to Victoria.
Hi, Victoria Kahipe. I'm Associate Director at the Office of Innovation Commercialization. Our office performs the standard technology transfer functions for the entire university. I, in particular, lead the physical sciences team. But, there's also a life sciences team. Nora is part of that. There's a lot of crossover technologies at UC San Diego, as all of you know, right? Because our MDs collaborate quite a bit with our engineers. My background is in physics, my background as well as in my previous career. I'll pass it on to Nora.
Thank you so much, everyone. My name is Nora Safa. I'm a Senior Innovation and Technology Commercialization Manager at the OIC on the Life Sciences side of the office. My background is chemical engineering and biotech research by training. I have experience working with droplet microfluidic devices for high-throughput single-cell screening, cell-penetrating peptides for intracellular delivery of reporters and therapeutics, as well as screening solid phase DNA encoded libraries in a droplet microfluidic platform and combining it with AI capabilities for drug discovery before I joined the office. More importantly, even I am a registered patent agent with a few years of experience practicing patent law at Wilson Sonsini and the startup that I worked for before joining UCSD. So I'd be happy to share some perspective and insight on what makes for a strong IP strategy as you build your startup.
Okay, that's tremendous. Thank you so much. So for attendees, we've got around 11 who are in now. And as a note, this session is being recorded. And we'll post it online so that other folks can come back to watch and kind of learn about the lessons and best prepared for their submission. So as an overview for accelerating innovation to market, submissions have to be made by a faculty or a researcher, so a primary investigator at UCSD. The programs that are submitted are completely agnostic, so they can be anywhere from battery compounds to software and AI to drug or therapeutic candidates. And we are interested in everything as a part of this effort to translate technology from lab to market. The funding cap per project is 50,000. You can, of course, go under 50,000 if that's all you need. And the award pool for this year is 400,000. Our goal is to have a good measure of parity between physical and life sciences. And so, on our campus, Victoria and Nora work as licensing officers with those different technology areas. The deadline, as a reminder, is October 31st, and the intake portal is all managed and accessible through InfoReady. The website, which I'm going to put in to the chat, is here for everyone's information. And yeah, so I think then for me, this, in terms of qualifiers, if you have an invention, it is not too early. And so Victoria and Nora, would you describe a little bit about how that first invention could be a project that we fund, and what are the things that a researcher would have to do to be a qualified submission in this program?
I believe your webpage said something like, if you haven't yet submitted a disclosure to our office, it's not too late, but then it would be required. Is that correct? Is that part of what your webpage said, right? Yeah. So we do have certain guidelines, first of all, you need to be able to disclose, right? So you should have a UCSD business account, right, to be able to submit to our online system. And then, of course, we would like to have all the information, both technical and administrative, around your invention, right? Because the administrative stuff, first of all, if it's an invention, patenting is a legal process. Inventorship should be correct, right? And then if there was a sponsor from before, we would like to know what the obligations for those sponsors would be. Then, as far as the technical aspects are concerned, they're all the criteria of patentability. Nora, being a patent agent, perhaps you could chime in and talk about that a little bit.
Sure. In terms of like how we assess inventions for patentability, is that the question?
Yes.
So there needs to be a discussion with the inventors. At least that's how I usually go about doing it. I try to understand from the inventors themselves, articulating what they believe is new from their vantage point about their technology, what's the problem they're solving, and what is the closest prior art that they're aware of. And it should be clear that this is not something that one can hide. Like we all of us have a duty to disclose the closest references that we're aware of to the patent office as inventors and patent practitioners involved with patent prosecution. So people need to come forward with it and say, hey, this is my invention. This is the closest prior art that I'm aware of. And oftentimes, because they're experts in the field, you find out that it comes from themselves because they've been doing research in this line of work for several years. So they need to tell us what the closest prior art is, and based on that, we'll assess whether there is still a novelty hook that we can work with to protect that invention. And well, first of all, it needs to be novel meaning that there shouldn't be a single document that discloses each and every element of a claim that we would like to get to protect that invention to make it commercially meaningful in terms of patent protection. And then second, if there is not disclosed in a single reference, it comes down to inventiveness, meaning that there shouldn't be multiple references that would arrive at the invention in a way that it lacks inventive step, like it would have been obvious to one of ordinary skill in the art. And the way to determine that is that, okay, do you have data that is surprising, that it's unexpectedly great, and can you demonstrate that? So essentially at this point, it comes down to their data, whether they can fully describe and enable their invention and show data that would prove that the invention is not obvious. So that's for patentability at a very, very high level. Of course, it's a lot more complicated than this, but if I were to summarize it in a couple of minutes, that would be it.
Okay, that's wonderful. In terms of then, so that's insights in terms of, the track to patentability. Are there any other, I guess, key things that you'd want inventors or potential submission, I guess, project submittees to know, with regard to, letting people know that they're going to be protected. So, are people at risk at all if they were to submit a project for funding with AIM, or is the university a safe place to pursue new ideas and entrepreneurial ventures?
I think,
Yeah,
sorry.
Go ahead.
To err on the side of caution, I always advise all of the inventors that I work with to try to file a provisional application before entering any competition, whether it's this opportunity or another opportunity, even for submitting certain grants. Now, grants are considered confidential. They're by themselves, they're not considered a public disclosure. But still, when you start talking about your invention to a lot of people, you're increasing the likelihood of somehow, the word getting out about it, at least tangentially. So if you can plan such that you file a provisional application before entering any competition, that would be the best. If you can't, then let's discuss on a case-by-case basis to see how to mitigate the risk there.
Okay, thank you. Great insight. And it's something as a note for all potential applicants that we we do not want any confidential information submitted to this program, that the level at which the decisions are made for awards can be done without deep confidential diligence. So, everything that goes into your submission should not be confidential information. There are portions of each.
which is the opposite of what you should be disclosing to our office. I just want to make that distinction, right? Your disclosure to the Office of Innovation Commercialization should be as detailed as possible, because we are the office that has that responsibility to protect your intellectual property. The AIM program submission is separate, right? I think you have reviewers that are outside the university. So technically, if you're a university employee, the intellectual property that you create, or inventions at least, right, as condition of your employment, is owned by the UC Regents. And our office has the responsibility to protect that asset of the state. Okay. The AIM program is run by our office, but it includes reviewers who are not part of our office. So that's why there's that distinction, right? Exactly. Your disclosure to our office should be detailed. Your submission to the program should not contain confidential information, because it will be reviewed by people outside of the office.
Correct. Thank you so much.
Yes.
And Shane, correct me if I'm wrong, but even from a practical standpoint, that would be more helpful. Think about it, if an investor is looking at what's submitted to them, if this is a pitch or a proposal of some sort, right? They don't need to know about every single detail of how the invention works. What they care about is to know, okay, what problem are you solving? What are you delivering in the end? And, that's usually non-confidential. But when you deal with patents, that high level thing usually is not your novelty hook. The novelty hook is the nitty-gritty of how you're doing it. What is the technical feature of the invention that's different from what was done before? So that's the confidential piece. You don't need to get into too much detail about that. First, because you want to protect your invention and you don't want to, tell everybody about it unnecessarily. Second, because investors start getting bored and they don't even care.
Right. Perfect transition. Steve checking over there. So Steve and Jay, so Steve, one, you likely have comment on that. So if you'd like to take that, and then I have a question for both you and Jay.
Sure. Well, as a practical matter, whether or not the panelists or reviewers are employees of the university, there's at least an implicit responsibility to keep, the discussions, presentations to ourselves within the group, as opposed to broadcasting them all over. And back to something that you were saying, Nora, I would just bookend. It's a great distinction about getting into the nitty-gritty versus, what's really valuable for a presentation like this. I would just simply add that one of the things I love to hear from presenters is, how is this, whatever this is, going to impact my life or the lives of whomever they're trying to target? Because that's ultimately, that's a very key part of communications, and often, particularly first-time entrepreneurs they aren't necessarily focused on that because they're so proud of the technology advance or whatever it is that they've come up with. So so for those on this call that are thinking about submitting, tell us about how this is going to make my life better or our lives better, whatever it is.
That, Steve, you pretty much anticipated my question is, what are the things, or if it's a question or a point to include, what are ways that we can create a compelling narrative or reason for this project to advance? I think
Yeah.
then to kind of include Jay here, Jay, these are all projects that are at different stages at their beginning, but looking to commercialize or move to market. What are, maybe the top 4 or 5 considerations that someone should think about if it's just the technology, the team, what other components should someone be thinking about as they're putting together a proposal?
Yeah, I come from a different lens. Steve is branding and I guess this idea of the social good, which is great. I look at it from a different perspective, which is I come from a Kickstarter sort of a world where I run a marketing company and I have a software company, and we used to help a bunch of Kickstarters get launched. And this was 5, 10 years ago. And the whole approach to Kickstarter is that, hey, I have this idea, give me money, and then maybe in a year you'll get it, right? And you build this product with the people who fund you. And it's very much like startup and venture capital money. And one of the most important aspect of Kickstarter campaign is the lead up to the actual launch and getting customers or vendors or people who are on board pretty early on and get them interested in your product. So I think, I mean, I think everybody on this panel, like we've had so many pitches, and it's so rare that your idea is like the first of its world kind, right? Like it's really rare that there's always a competitor, somebody else doing something different, and it could be something crazy, like I don't know, Fitbit for dogs probably exists already. I don't know. I just came out with this idea, right? Fitbit for dogs. Like, why do dogs need it? I don't know. But if you submit an application and you show traction saying, oh, we have 1,000 people who are interested in buying Fitbit for dogs, or any other crazy idea, right? It could be the craziest idea that you've ever had, but if you have customers and traction, then okay. I mean, I think a VC would be crazy not to invest in something that is so niche and no one's ever thought of. But if you have customers and early traction, then yes, we'll invest in you. It kind of goes against what Victoria was saying as well, right? Which is, well, you have this intellectual property, or you don't want your startup to be known and everyone else to steal the idea. So there's a fine line between giving out your magic versus showing a bit of it so that you have early adopters. And I highly recommend everyone read who are on the attendees to read Crossing the Chasm. Great startup book about how to get things going, or Malcolm Gladwell, Tipping Point. But you really need to show that with your application. And if you do, it's like, oh, it's great. We can go into a whole process of how to do that. But I think this call is too short for it. But definitely, if you're interested, connect with me and I can probably help you.
Right, Jay, that's excellent. And it's something where you can have, like you said, the great invention. It's wonderful. Steve, you mentioned this too. It's the next greatest thing. But if you don't have a story that's compelling, you don't have a demonstrated kind of interest, maybe from the market or potential customers, then it is less compelling overall. And so I think, Julio, a part of what you do is leveraging networks and helping to connect these early technologies to partners, if it's a strategic partner or potential customers. What are some ways that you feel like are strategically productive, or would you have recommendations on how best to do that?
Yeah, well, let me touch on, because I think one of the most important parts is how you put your narrative together and how you articulate your idea. Some of this comes back to what was discussed earlier, that there's this art of how to socialize your idea to get as much feedback as possible, because you want to pressure test your idea, right? So you want to go out there and you want to get its feedback. I think a common misconception Especially a lot of us that come from academia is like we come from this like world where we're afraid that our grant's going to get scooped or our papers are just going to get scooped before it goes to publication with Nature, et cetera. Startup World is like completely opposite, where you want to get as much feedback as possible, but there is an art, and you got to learn how to discuss your breakthroughs without spilling your secret sauce, right? So there's an art to that, and I think that's kind of what they were hitting on before. Where you definitely want to work with the university, make sure that IP is protected. But for a vast majority of the conversations with potential investors and potential key partners, right? A lot of at least the initial conversations, a lot of that could be facilitated without divulging confidential information. And your goal around getting that feedback, is really to figure out what are you not thinking about, right? What's an outside perspective that your team is missing, and also just to get like feedback on the idea when you're at the pre-seed seed stage and you want to raise funding, right, from investors. Some of them are going to be friends, family, others may be colleagues who right, senior folks in the industry that know you personally and might back you, not necessarily because of your idea, but because they know you'll work hard at making it successful, matter the trials and tribulations. So I think being able to articulate your idea in a way that is engaging, that doesn't take 10 minutes to spit out, right? So really work on boiling it down, having a really nice introduction of yourself and the idea. And when you start to go and network and get feedback, at some point you're going to start talking to investors. And I think part of AIM, I think really good topic we haven't really touched on, is the use of funds, right? You're going to be getting, I think, up to 50K. And the best use of funds anytime, whenever you go ask for funding, is really to use it on, like, if you think about your customer, right? You think about the solution that's in your mind that you want to get out in the world, there's a customer for it. And you're going to have huge impact for this customer. This may be a patient, right, where it's a therapeutic. It might be a technology where you're helping, with the pet health, right, with the example that Jay used there. And what you want to do is when you're asking for money, you want to specifically ask for the money that is exploring what has the highest impact on who you think is your end customer, but that you have no evidence for. Because when it comes to the startup world and applying money, we want to apply money in the riskiest parts of the business that could kill your company. So we don't want to fund things that you already know about, right, that have high impact. And of course, you're not going to do something that has low impact on your customer, right, that you already have evidence for or don't have evidence for. So really thinking about your use of funds in terms of how do I get evidence where I don't have it currently that apply to an area that has a high impact for who I think is the potential beneficiary of this technology. And if you can get that all into a couple of sentences, right? Your team, the technology, the value proposition, really in just a few sentences, that really will facilitate your conversations with partners and potential investors.
Absolutely, and sound advice. I think what both you and Jay have said is, how do you demonstrate traction and, really show that you're putting resources, time, and attention into the risky parts that create great impact. Some of the other areas that we look as markers of, someone's on the right track and this project is worth funding are, how have you taken advantage of existing campus resources? Have you tapped into grant funding or other similar opportunities? And so I wanted to make sure that I added a link here that our office put together a list of programs on our campus linked to the different phases of the entrepreneurship journey. So our campus collectively has agreed on, we've got 5 stages. So there's the ideate phase, which is the first part. You're making an invention disclosure. You haven't formed a company yet. Then from there, you go on to explore more about the opportunity. You develop it, potentially create an MVP or a prototype. From there, you then validate that. So that's what Jay was talking about, getting customer feedback and making sure that it's the right solution for who you're trying to serve. The next step in that journey is to launch, to actually get a company formed and get out there and start to connect with your audience, your market, or patients. And then last is growth. And that's a part of what our office does and coordinates activity with across campus. So most most projects that we see in coming through this program are going to be at the idea phase, potentially an exploration. There is no disqualifier if you've already formed the company. And as Julio said, we want to see funds going towards the big ideas, the big milestone potential impact pieces that could be achieved within 12 months. So this is not a fundamental research funding award. It's really for that thing or that milestone that's going to get you to jump to market. In terms of then two, we talk about, and we've put pieces in our internal review that talk about a strong IP position. It includes kind of an assessment of how well a proposal considers threats in the market. Does the panel have thoughts about, what would someone put into a proposal that contemplates, an IP position, and then how do they counter or convey that they've considered threats potentially to the technology or in the market?
Shane, so this gets a little difficult to answer. But to be honest, I wouldn't be too worried about it. If the market opportunity is great, if it makes sense, and if there's a path to actually commercialize it. For example, especially in life sciences, if it's not too risky or way too expensive to even get the thing to work, that would make the invention even meaningful for commercialization. And if it is, IP can be figured out. I'm just returning from a meeting with one of our VC partners that frequently invests in early stage startups out of universities. And they validated the same point, and they said, at the very early stages of funding, what would be a deal breaker is more on the FTO side than as opposed to patent prosecution side. Because, if there's an FTO issue, it means you don't have freedom to operate. Someone else might come over and sue you. Like if you're straight out copying someone or the field is too crowded, that would be a deal breaker for them. But, if they don't have like a whole strong patent portfolio at the early stages, but it's a good opportunity, they know that they can get more patents later on. So I wouldn't be too stressed over it at this stage. But I'd be happy to hear from others on the panel about what they think.
Well, it would still be a good idea or reflect well on the proposal, right? If they had some sense of what's out there, the landscape, right? And which relates to your freedom to operate point there, Nora. But you could also rely on the people in our office. I mean, these proposals will go to our teams, right? And we would go through them, and we, hopefully the proposal will get matched to the right people with, the expertise in that field. And hopefully that person will have some information that the proposer might not have, right? To connect certain dots or to identify possible threats or possible strengths, right? So that's part of our function, right? Is to evaluate a disclosure. Yeah. So we would evaluate the disclosure as well as would look at the proposal, right? The two together. So
sure. And if they have something that is patentable that's left on the table, we can for sure help file an application on it. So we'll do what's in our power for sure.
Okay. Steve, did you have something to add?
Yeah, just one thought. Discussions on this topic, in my mind, often have more to do with demonstrating your intelligence and your deep think capabilities as a presenter um, and which then instills confidence among me as a reviewer, if you will, that you can actually make X happen, whatever X is. So I just throw that in there.
Yeah,
So,
I'd like to just enhance what Steve shared there. I mean, yeah, the competition, again, what we want to see, if I have my investor hat on, is we want to see that you put some thought into it, right? If you come out there saying, I've got no competition, this is the first thing, first time anyone's ever in the world has ever thought about that, you lose credibility immediately, right?
Yeah.
Because regardless of how novel you think it is, there's probably a status quo, right? There's some other way the customer is solving that problem today, and it's probably not the best way, and your technology is probably better. But there's very often, almost never, something that's completely new for the world, right? And so showing you have put the thought in, if as an investor, if I can Google real quickly, some competitors that have raised millions of dollars, and they're not on your. I see Shane's pulling something up. And it's not, on the radar. At least you convey it. You lose a lot of credibility. And I won't get into the tactics of how to look for competitors, but showing effort, showing you have deep thought around it. You really understand the space, and you really understand who your competition is. From an investor perspective, it's not about being right as much as showing that you put that effort in, right? And then also the fact that you put the effort in, again, as Steve said, really does give me the confidence that, okay, these people are professional, right? And they're going to take a professional approach to doing something with my money.
I'm just
but
sharing this screen real quickly. Just I think about competition. I mean, Steve, Julio, how many times have we seen this slide in a pitch deck, right? Like
Yeah.
everyone says our company is the best for the X and Y, and here's everyone. This is just something I pulled off the internet, just so you know. So everything what everyone said. I'm just commenting that. Okay, your might be XY axis the greatest, but really have a Y and then show the traction. That's it.
Yep.
I just wanted to add, right? I want to encourage the proposers to disclose early if they haven't yet, right? Because you have actually a lot of resources in our office, right? You get assigned to one person who can help you out with, thinking through these things, and that person has other people in their network, so on and so forth. So, if you haven't yet disclosed, do it today. Right.
Well, I want to provide some time for attendees to ask any specific questions that they might have. I think if anyone raises their hand, I can allow folks to talk, or you can drop questions in the chat. So I'll provide a little bit of time if anyone would like to ask a question. Any questions right away? In terms of I'm trying to think of Steve and Julio, I think both of you have worked with teams who have been funded by this at some point.
Mhm.
Could you speak to maybe the success or, the impact of this funding that it had to help someone or a team, hit a milestone, and kind of where are they at now? I mean, was this the right decision for them to chase this opportunity? And what kind of example might you provide or share that shows that kind of impact?
Sure. I'll just lead off here. The what I've experienced is by far, the biggest impact among presenters who receive awards is it's not only a grant of dollars, but it's a grant of enormous confidence. Um, And for entrepreneurs who are doing this for the first time or very early in the process, that means everything to to get it gives them the strokes to keep continuing in this on this idea, because you're talking to some people who have some experience, in the startup world, um, who see something in you, in your idea, that says go. And the dollars are certainly helpful. In fact, um, I'm working with one company that has now it's a company that has started on campus, that has just announced its launch, not only in the US but in India, and that's a whole other story. But there's another one about to launch, and then there's a third one that I'm working on that yeah, that also has launched now that I'm med tech. But anyway, all three have won various levels of awards, and it just meant everything to those teams to keep working on this, because as we all know, startups are hard. I mean, they're incredibly hard, and to get that ego boost, if you want, at this stage, in addition to the cash, is very, very meaningful. It's an early proof of concept, if you will, very early. So.
Yeah, I've had the benefit of seeing a lot of teams through these AIM opportunities, and some succeed, some don't, and I think that's the beauty of it. Is it really is early proof of concept. This is, if you're going to take the startup journey, this is one of those first steps where you don't have to bet the farm, right? You don't have to quit your job, you don't have to leave your program, right, and go all in. This is the university putting resources in, and the community putting resources in to help you explore to see if it makes sense for you to go all in or not, right? And it's very early, and I think the community is there to support you. We don't expect that you're going to go pitch and win $5 million the next day. We expect things to be rough, and that's actually what I think gets a lot of us excited. There is you're starting through AIM, that you're starting a relationship with partners who may eventually be on your board as an advisor, as a board of director, maybe even an investor, right? And it's the start of the relationship, right? Before you start going down, worrying about taking investments in, and whether you want to license it or start a company, right? This is an opportunity for you to get some money to really figure out things from the technology perspective, from the business perspective. Of course, you get this recognition. I think that helps also boost you if you do decide, you go collect more evidence from customers, or you de-risk the technology more. This is a leverage point for you to get that recognition in the community, where the university is backing you. That does help then attract more team members, investments, and advisors. And as part of the relationship, I'll kind of leave you with this. This is a lot of your partners, especially the investors, when we look at it, we look at this as the beginning of your story, right? The beginning of your arc. And one of the most important things we look at, and why we want to, as investors, build relationships with the founders, and we're not going to invest on day one, is we want to see what your say-do ratio is. You say you're going to go do this, and time fast forward, did you go do it, or did you not, right? And so what we want to know is, how accountable can you be? You said you're going to do it, do you do it? And that say-do ratio really plays into whether we as investors eventually step up and write that nice $2.5 million seed check for you, when you get to that stage. So it's really important, like I said, it's building that relationship, and this is a great opportunity to really start that. And we've seen teams, I think, succeed from here, right? I think Limber came through AIM. I know Imperium has come through AIM. So we've seen a lot of great successes come through here, and leverage this as, now it actually opens the door. As you get this AIM award, it actually opens the door. And again, more of us in the community know about you. We want to open more doors for you, right? We want to say, hey, as you're pitching, like, hey, I'm going to connect some dots. Like, you're saying you're going to go build this algorithm that needs some clinical data. Did you know there's a professor on campus that actually has the clinical data? So let me give you some feedback, not only on your pitch, but make some dotted connections that might help you build towards your goal, and be helpful in that way too.
Julio nailed it. That I mean, I should put you in charge in terms of spokesperson for recruiting applicants. Because
All
it,
the all
you know,
those in favor say aye.
yeah, it is like just like you said, you put yourself on the map when you apply. Even applying helps us get to know who's out there and who's interested, funded or not. Our office is keen to learn about what everyone's doing. If you have entrepreneurial or innovator kind of ambitions, we want to do what we can to support you. So in terms of a few stats, Steve, you mentioned a few spinoffs or companies that have formed our campus. I think in a year we like to see around 20 to 25 startup companies. Those would be licensed startup companies. So those are ones that are founded by faculty members with technology that's licensed and managed through the university. That doesn't include our student startups. And so I don't want to discount the efforts that they contribute and they make to our startup ecosystem. Very commonly, we see faculty working with a graduate student to launch these early companies. And so really know that you're a part of a larger community, a lot of people, just like the folks who showed up here to share their morning with you, that want to see you succeed. We'll ask you hard questions, we'll challenge you to think differently, and ultimately, with the goal of having the next breakout amazing companies making lives better around the world. So I think we're about at time. I said I would cut off a little bit here at the end, but just want to say thank you so much to everyone for joining. Thank you to our panelists. And if are there any kind of final parting words from the panel?
Hey, one thought that comes to mind
Yes.
is that if you present your idea and you do not ultimately receive a reward, there is still enormous value in going through this process. And because, first of all, you meet people that you haven't otherwise met. As Shane was saying, you get plugged into networks on campus that may give you, the what may be perceived as the missing piece in your presentation. And I mean, I've seen teams who, perhaps aren't successful the first time around be successful in succeeding presentations. I mean, if you think about it, that's what being an entrepreneur is all about. Uh, Failing and then picking yourself up and trying again if you really truly believe in what it is you're trying to achieve. So anyway, I just share that. Everybody who presents gets something out of this, whether it's dollars or uh, meeting folks that can help you, and by the way, helping you. I saw Julio presented or shared a chat note earlier, uh, and I'll say the same thing, and that is that, I mean, Julio's an EIR, Jay is an EIR, I'm an EIR. One of the functions of an EIR is to help teams or presenters such as yourself be successful in developing good presentations. So if you want the help of any of us, I'm not trying to volunteer Julio or Jay, but if you want the help of any of us, please reach out. We're all available. So.
Right. Perfect. Well, I'm not going to add anything else. Steve, thank you so much. Julio, thank you. Nora, Victoria, thank you. Jay, thank you so much.
You bet. Pleasure.
Okay.
All right. Good
Wonderful
luck,
day.
everyone.
All right.
All right.